Really early on this year, I found myself in a situation that had me end up with two RTX 4070s, and I was looking to sell one of them. A potential buyer asked me if I was willing to trade the card for his Xbox Series X, plus some cash. I wasn't interested in owning a 9th gen console. I've been mostly happy playing on PC for the last 8 years, and while I was a huge fan of the original Xbox, I spent 7th gen and 8th gen on PlayStation. But STALKER 2 is coming out on Xbox, and I want to see how it plays there, and GTA 6 is coming next year, and it's going to be exclusive to consoles. So I agreed to the trade deal, and wham! I now proudly own the third place console of the 9th generation, plus cash. And I really thought I was going to play it a little bit and just leave it in the living room for occasional use. Maybe sell it too if I was just not using it at all. But the thing is, I just can't put this controller thing down. On paper, there's not many good reasons to own one of these if you have a relatively high-end PC, which I fortunately do. It's not a secret, but as far as the general impression of the 9th generation goes...
Where are the fucking games?
And the Xbox Series X is the biggest culprit. There's hardly anything worth playing on the Xbox that isn't already available on PC, if anything at all. Even Halo, which needs no introduction, and that other game, the one with the big burly dudes who touch each other frequently and overcome adversity through the power of friendship. Is it Gears or Gears of War? I don't know. I'm new to these, but I do like them. These two play great on PC, and not only that, but there hasn't been much that I find interesting in the AAA space in the era of the game as a service. By the way, you can't say live service games without saying gay! Thankfully, and not soon enough, the end of live service appears to be nigh, or at least its prevalence. And now, the Xbox Games Showcase has finally given this box a good reason to exist, with very promising upcoming titles, especially STALKER 2. I'm gonna go ahead and say that after half a year with this console, an Xbox Series X is money much better spent than a similarly priced PC, and much better value than a similarly spec'd PC. If you have 1,000 American dollaroos and want to play STALKER 2, GTA 6, Atomfall, Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, I think you're better off with an Xbox and a $500 laptop than a $1,000 PC. And that's because this Xbox, like the original Xbox, has a lot of PC DNA in it and still plenty of power to competently drive most games at 60 FPS performance modes. Of course, if you want to get all the extra detail and accurate ray-traced lighting and reflections, there's the quality option. I find myself picking one or the other in different games. If gameplay greatly benefits from frame rate, I'll choose the performance mode, but if atmosphere greatly benefits from quality, I'll pick that. Sometimes it is a little bit hard to choose if I'm honest, but you're still enjoying the game either way. And before we make the comparison with PC allowing you to have both quality and performance, remember the price. In terms of horsepower, the Series X is not only a class above the average gaming PC from the Steam Hardware Survey, plenty more powerful in both CPU and GPU, but it's less expensive too. And by the way, this PC parts list here has so many cut corners, you don't want that build. You don't want to build that machine. Realistically, you'd spend a lot more money buying new or time and risk hunting down secondhand deals. And it's a concern that I see a lot and I've addressed before, but it's how a console release affects STALKER 2. Look, Series X handles Unreal Engine 5 so far exquisitely. I think STALKER 2 will be no problem for it at all. And not only that, like I said, there's a lot of PC DNA in the Xbox. Many games fully support mouse and keyboard, and some of them are intended to be played with mouse and keyboard, and if they don't, they're likely to at least support the inputs. You only have to mind where you map the button prompts. It's as close to PC gaming as a console can get, and there's the added bonus that many titles bought on the console also carry over to your PC app.
I have an account on both Windows 10 and Xbox, so buy the game once. Your save game works across both platforms, and many of the games are going to allow you to play games across networks, across devices, so you can play on Windows against people on Xbox or with people on Xbox. But it's really the idea about buying the game once and having it available on both platforms.
So, if you intend to build or buy a high-end PC later, you'll already have a pretty respectable library of games to dig into once you do. But for less than $500, I only see the PS5 competing with the Xbox, and that isn't quite as powerful, a little bit, and it doesn't have the PC DNA that I was talking about. It scratches a different itch entirely. And for so much power, it's even more impressive how small the Series X is, and how silently it can push even the most demanding games. I love small form factor PCs, and the Series X just makes me blush. This design is genius. The big fan up top spins relatively slow because it's a big opening for the outlet blowing outside, which creates negative pressure inside the chassis, drawing air in through a small opening. And this big outlet and small inlet design means that air rushes inside the chassis quickly through the heatsink without forcing the fans to the point where they ever make any noise, at least in the chimney configuration. I'm blown away, pun intended. It's so simple, yet genius, and it's currently impossible to imitate in a PC build, and that pisses me off because I want to build a PC like this. But the best hardware design clearly hasn't been enough to make Series X competitive, or at least competitive enough. It seems that the popular belief is that only exclusive titles are the real reason people buy consoles, and that's just never been Xbox's bread and butter. Excluding the Xbox One at launch, the VCR, they've always been about the power. And Xbox is also kind of responsible for the current landscape in which multi-platform is the standard. Remember how things were in 5th gen before Xbox existed? Exclusivity was less about licensing as it is now than it was about hardware compatibility. The same title would be a different game entirely for N64 and PS1, and for 6th and 7th generations, Xbox had the clear advantage in multi-platform games compared to the PS2 and PS3 respectively, all but forcing PlayStation to abandon their very unique graphics and processing solutions like Emotion Engine, Cell, GS, and RSX.
The hardware was very, very hard to use for the developers. And I just couldn't stop thinking maybe there was a different path. Maybe there was a hardware that could be made where it would be more natural to make the games.
All in favor of x86, just like PCs and just like the original Xbox.
Because the potential design space of PlayStation 4 was going to be pretty limited if we couldn't use the x86 CPU.
But if you forget PlayStation for a minute, the truth is that unless you want a seamless and comfortable gaming experience without having to deal with troubleshooting, setting configurations, organizing separate games launchers, there's nothing that the Xbox can do with modern games that a PC can't, except be cheaper and get you up and running in seconds thanks to Quick Resume. And that's something to keep in mind. For the future, I think it would be extremely beneficial for Xbox to do everything in their power to fully integrate players' libraries with PC, with cross-buy across the board. Make Xbox what it was originally intended to be, the living room PC, but actually make it compelling to PC gamers, not people who watch
television, TV.
Xbox, go home.
And it's time that I come clean with why I've actually been playing this machine more than my PC over the last few months. A big reason has been comfort. It's simpler, faster, and easier to get into games with the Xbox than it is with my PC. Not only that, but I actually enjoy having friends over and playing split screen, and my girlfriend has been really enjoying sitting with me while I play, and she sometimes really gets into the games, like Alan Wake 2, a game you should buy, by the way. We've been loving it, and we can't wait for the Lake House expansion. Just playing this game together, solving Cauldron Lake's mysteries together has been so much fun, but I just can't imagine us having that same experience sitting on my desk. Sure, a living room PC might work, but it won't be as cheap or as simple as the Xbox. Lastly, and probably biggestly, I've come to really appreciate the effort that Microsoft has put into backwards compatibility and game ownership. I think it's nuts that you can play a disc-based game that you bought in 2001 with this thing. I've been hunting for bargains on old OG Xbox games and Xbox 360 games, even Xbox One games for ridiculous prices, and finding new sealed versions of my favorite games and defiling their wrapper and getting to experience that new old game smell. Oh yeah! Mind you, this isn't really nostalgia. I actually grew up playing the Nintendo 64, GameCube, and Wii before spending my teenage years on PlayStation. Although I did acquire the original Xbox quite a while ago and started collecting games for it, I just love playing these games on the Series X now because the experience is so good. A long list of them have had their resolutions and frame rates boosted, and while their graphical settings are now noticeably lower than their PC versions because it's not coming through a noisy low-resolution analog signal, just look at Max Payne 2 on my PC versus my original Xbox, these older games are still easier to get up and running correctly on the Xbox, especially if you want controller support for any given reason, or you don't want to have to mod the game so that it displays the correct aspect ratio for our modern resolutions. And some of them weren't even available on PC like Black, so it's just amazing to play these games as the timeless works of art that they are, and not have them left behind a few console generations ago, which is such an unfortunate thing about games like Killzone on PS3. Which brings me to the unfortunate reality that despite Xbox having the best backwards compatibility program on console, a lot of games have still been left behind. It still needs more work, especially if Microsoft reps are going to beat their chest about game preservation and ownership.
Bringing your games into the future with our commitment to game preservation.
A lot of 360 titles still run in their original target resolutions and frame rates, and perhaps could be enhanced like Gears of War 2 and Red Dead Redemption have been, but also, this is my OG Xbox collection. It's pretty great, huh? I brag about it. But these are the games from it that I can play on the Series X. I can't brag about this, it's too small. And mind you, some of these, like Secret Missions over Normandy, I acquired because of their Series X compatibility. It's a great game from a forgotten genre, and you should play it. It was a great discovery, but my favorite 6th gen shooter, Call of Duty 2 Big Red 1, is published by Activision, which Microsoft owns, which means Microsoft owns Call of Duty. So there is no reason, no legal obstacle in the way of this being backwards compatible too. And it isn't. And before you say that Call of Duty 2 is available, yes, I have it, I love it, but it is not the same game. I'd be thrilled to see this game officially preserved, because the only way to officially play it is by dusting off an old 6th gen console. And speaking of Call of Duty, where is the original? There's already an Xbox 360 version, all you have to do is port it. Call of Duty Classic. The only version of Call of Duty 1 with official widescreen support, believe it or not. The PC version needs modding for widescreen. How is this not playable on Series X? It's just so sad that even Call of Duty's parent company treats everything before Call of Duty 4 like abandonware. And speaking of things not being playable, Remote Play is an excellent feature that I use a lot. It is very good. Bitrate could be better, but latency is fantastic, and it has made me consider getting one of those fancy schmancy GameSir controllers like the X2 or G8. And while this video wasn't sponsored by GameSir, it absolutely could be. But unfortunately, 6th and 7th generation games cannot be played remotely from the Xbox phone app. You can on the PC, but inexplicably, you can't on your phone or a tablet. And as I said, one of my favorite things to do on the Series X is play those games. So that is extremely disappointing. Regardless, I've had so much fun playing the games of the last generations that I miss playing and missed out on for one reason or another. And I've had even more fun hunting them down and collecting them, and seeing that they're still alive. It's so great to see how games like Battlefield 3 still have active 360 servers. The same can't be said for the PS3 version, which is the one that I put hundreds of hours into. damn, I was good at this game. And all these amazing reasons I love the Xbox is also why it's so confusing and strange how Xbox and Microsoft, who have been the best console for game preservation and ownership, have also implemented an awful, always online DRM that stops your disc-based games, your single-player disc-based games, from booting when Xbox Live goes down. You have to manually turn off networking and make sure that your console is registered as your home console for your games to work. Not just that, but they've been touting and marketing the complete opposite of game ownership with Game Pass, which is just glorified games renting. I think Game Pass is good for subscribing for a month to try out new product games that you'll buy and want to keep. I actually wish that Game Pass was a weekly $5 subscription instead of a monthly $20. But hey, maybe you're into live service games, that's all you play, which, by the way, judging you. And it doesn't make sense to own future abandonware with always online DRM that takes up 200 gigabytes on your drive. I wouldn't want to own that either. I think that the fact that you're paying a subscription also kind of gives you FOMO that if you don't play Game Pass games, you're going to be wasting your subscription money. And that's the main reason I avoid, like the plague, long-term subscriptions altogether. I think as consumers, this is our last chance to preserve game ownership as the standard, because ultimately a corporation like Microsoft, Ubisoft, EA, Sony, they're legally required to make profitable decisions based on data. And if the data says that consumer ownership of media, or ownership of licenses of media if you want to get super technical, if the data says that that is less profitable than offering temporary subscriptions to access that media, the landscape will shape towards the latter, and that's kind of how we ended up with the great games drought of the 9th generation that seems to be confusing people, making them believe that PS5 and Xbox Series suck. They don't. It's just that, unfortunately, if you play live service games that are refreshed with content drops, if you've bought a season pass, or in-game currency, or skins, then you're telling the corporations that make decisions based on profit data that it is not worth it for them to develop new projects and new games until the old ones become outdated or dead. You're actively betting on already existing games being expanded upon forever, leaving you with installs that bloat to 200 gigabytes over time, full of the wacky skins that other people have bought, but you have to install. The movies, music, and TV industries have all but abandoned ownership, and some of it has been good, like music, but games are following suit now, and I'm concerned about how we're not doing a good job as consumers in understanding the consequences of accepting an always online, no ownership model. Seeing how an Xbox Live outage can turn the Series X into a brick, or how VCR Xbox Ones are turning into bricks with the latest firmware update, it just makes me wonder how useful this Series X will be in 20 years. Contrast that with my original Xbox, manufactured in 2003, which is still going strong. Series X is probably going to be the last Xbox to support physical media, so it's really scary to imagine it turning into a brick because of its always online DRM. Emphasizing console and game ownership is one huge thing that Microsoft can do to restore goodwill from consumers, something that they have lost over the past 2 generations. That recent period in which Xbox Live went down for a few hours might be a hint of things to come, and I am concerned. Microsoft has a potentially winning formula for the latter half of this generation here with the better hardware, the backwards compatibility, the upcoming games. Even the developer mode that each console can run is incredible. But the reason they're in last place right now is because their goodwill score is probably too low. More trust needs to be built with players, and now that I'm in the Xbox space, I can kind of see a bit of an internal struggle between what the Xbox team knows needs to be done and is trying to get done, and Microsoft setting requirements that'll look good in PowerPoint presentations for executives to gawk at. I've been in corporate meetings like that. It's pretty tactless, but it still works in business. It does make money, which is also scary. We saw what the games as a service model did to the industry in the first half of the 9th generation. The pendulum is swinging back in favor of games as a product now. And we have a chance to assert what we want as consumers. Now that we have that chance, do we really want to see what game libraries as a service is gonna look like in 5 years? I don't even want to imagine it. I think you're shameless plug, your money is better spent joining the CIA, an organization that funds this channel, so thank you to its members. Don't get me wrong, I still think that the Xbox Series X is a great product. I love it. I use it every single day. The massive library of great games from 4 different generations is an absolute joy to experience. But it's only fair that after handing Xbox praise for what they're doing right, I raise my concerns and explicitly lay out my criticisms. I really like the hardware. I really like the games. But I do not like entrusting the fate of those to a subscription model. I can't game right, and this is my idea.